Hi everyone, good evening and welcome to this session on reading comprehension. So today is the 19th daily drill that we have been running for 4 weeks now, and today we thought we'll do a session on reading comprehension, right? So we have two passages today, 9 questions in total I believe, because one passage has 6 questions and I think another one has 3 questions from what I remember. Let me just confirm it once. I think there are 3 questions. Yeah, 3 questions in the second passage. So total of 9 questions that we have in today's session. If I'm audible and if my PPT is visible, just give me a go ahead. I'll also check it from my side and then we can start with the session today. Just give me a second. I'll just log into my account. Alright, perfect. So everything is fine. Hi Rajat, thank you for confirming. And we'll start with the session. Alright, so before we start, I'll just give you one small update from our side. Just give me a second. Okay. Just give me a second, okay? Yeah. Alright, yeah. So one quick update from our side. I'm sure some of you would have already seen the posts that we have made on LinkedIn and on the WhatsApp status. We are 1000 members strong today. In fact, in the afternoon we crossed 1000 subscribers. So thank you everyone for subscribing to the channel first of all before we start, and I'm glad all of you have decided to join this initiative and you turn up for these sessions every day, and that basically gives us more motivation to do an even better job. So we have been steadily growing. Last month or so we added 1000 subscribers, so I think that is a good beginning. And of course, yeah, we have much larger numbers in front of us, so not the time to be satisfied with what we have got and to look at even more, right? So on that note, let's start with today's session. So as I mentioned, there are two passages today. Both of them are very easy passages, right? So very easy to read, science/history kind of passages. So it's more or less assumed that it will be manageable, right? If it is a very difficult economics based passage or some colonialism, political theory based passage, then it will be a bit difficult because not a lot of us read these things on an ongoing basis. But for most of the rest of us, I think, for most of us rather, these are much more interesting. Okay, so on that note, let's get going with the session. Two passages. First passage will take roughly 40ish minutes, I believe, and the next one should be done in another 20, right? So we will have the next 1 hour ahead of us. And for those of you who are wondering, these are actual CAT passages, right? So let's start with this one. What I will do is, again, for the benefit of those of you who haven't attempted the test, what I will do is I'll just show you the passages. Have a look at, read this passage as quickly as you can. I'll give you a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes is what I'm planning to give, and then maybe you can have a look at the questions and we can solve along, right? So this is the second slide of the passage that we have, the third and the fourth paragraphs that we have. Then the last couple of paragraphs, I believe. This is the last one, yeah. Shrubs like crowberry and alpine azalea. And these are the questions. So this is question 1. The purpose of this passage is to do what? Then all of the following statements are true except. So we have to find which one is the one that is not consistent with the passage. This is the third question. Based on this extract, the author would support which one of the following actions? And paragraph 6, the author provides the examples of crowberry and alpine azalea to demonstrate that. And this is the fifth one. Which one of the following statements can be inferred from the passage? So there are 4 statements given to us. And this is the last question, I think. In paragraph 1, the author uses blankets as a device to do what? Alright. So those are the questions for the first RC that we are going to do. So I'll again come back to the first. Yeah, I think it should be visible. Yeah, I'll come back to the first slide that is there, and then we will stop here. I'll just stop here for a couple of minutes. Take your time, read the passage, and then we can start looking at the solution. So it's 8:07, 8:09 ko let's start. Till that point in time, you can go back, check out the passage, understand a bit, and maybe if you want, you can pause the video, solve it on your own, and then have a look at the video as it progresses. You can maybe increase the speed or just skip ahead, right? So that is something you can do. And if there is any doubt at any point in time, let me know in the comments, in the chat. I'll try to address it then and there. And if there's something that needs a deeper intervention, then we will do it slightly later. Yeah. So take another minute, a minute and a half, and then we will start with this particular passage. Yeah, so I hope all of you have had a chance to read this passage. What's a good time to complete these passages in the exam? Rajat, generally I would not really spend more than 7 to 8 minutes on a passage max. 10 minutes 30 seconds both passages is very good. So 9 questions in 10:30 is like pretty good. Ideally for 9 questions which are doable, you should not take more than 18 minutes. That is my judgment. But 10:30 के अंदर 2 passages we are doing, and if you are getting 7 or 8 right out of 9, I think it's a good enough attempt. ठीक है? Alright, so let's get going with the first passage. So let's read it together and then try to solve the questions that are there. So, alright, so let's get going. Now, during the frigid season, it's often necessary to nestle under a blanket to try to stay warm, right? Again, we are talking about, yeah, Rajat, then that is fantastic. That is brilliant. So the passages are manageable. So I think it's a very good attempt, to be honest. Okay? To stay warm, the temperature difference between the blanket and the air outside is so palpable that we often have trouble leaving our warm refuge. तो दोनों sentences एक ही चीज बोल रहे हैं, right? During the frigid season, मतलब basically when it is cold, it is often necessary to nestle under a blanket. So you should ideally stay under a blanket to stay warm, and the temperature difference between the blanket and the air, so that temperature difference is so palpable, मतलब you can feel it. Palpable is something that you can touch and feel. So it is palpable, meaning you can understand it, you can feel it. That we often have trouble leaving our warm refuge. So you cannot really throw your blanket away and go here and there, right? So people who are from a relatively colder climate. Mostly I want to refer to people who stay in Delhi. You might be able to understand this in a better manner, but it's very difficult for you to leave that warm refuge and go out. Many plants and animals similarly hunker down. So in winters, the plants and animals also hunker down, relying on snow cover. So they don't have a blanket, they can't manufacture a blanket. That's why they rely on snow cover for safety from winter's harsh conditions. So you might think that snow is cold, but this snow basically shields them from the outer or the external windy or cold climate that exists. The small area between the snowpack, so snowpack and the ground. So if this is the ground and this is basically the snowpack, let's say, जो भी not a very good representation of snow, but this region that exists between the snowpack and the ground, this is called the subniveum. So a new term that has been introduced. So this is the point of the passage. What is the point of the passage? Author को क्या जरूरत है इतना बैठ के 6 पैराग्राफ लिखने का? That the author wants to tell you what subniveum is. Might be the most important ecosystem that you have heard of. So now subniveum introduce कर दिया है, and now you are curious about what subniveum is. Hopefully, the subniveum is so well insulated and stable that its temperature holds steady at around 32 degrees Fahrenheit. 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal human temperature, if you look at it, will be 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit, जो भी around that 98 degrees range. But यहाँ पे 32 degree Fahrenheit है, which is 0 degrees Celsius. Although that might still sound cold, so 32 degree Fahrenheit or 0 degree Celsius might sound cold, a constant temperature of 32 degree Fahrenheit can often be 30 to 40 degrees warmer than the air temperature during the peak of winter. So although is a transition word, so whatever is the conventional wisdom उसको challenge किया जा रहा है. Whatever you know about something that is being challenged यहाँ पे क्या challenge किया जा रहा है? 0 degree Celsius according to us is cold, but this is warmer than the air temperature. 30 to 40 degrees warmer होता है. Right? So again, a very basic assumption has been challenged, a very important, a very interesting fun fact has been shared with you. Because of this large temperature difference, a wide variety of species depend on the subniveum for winter protection. Very easy, right? So here we are dependent on the blanket for winter protection. The animals and the plants that exist here, species, are dependent on the subniveum for winter protection. Very easy. आगे देखते हैं क्या होता है. For many organisms living in temperate and arctic regions, the difference between being under the snow or outside is a matter of life and death. It is similar to what human beings also face in many situations, right? If it is very cold outside and if you don't have a blanket, there are cases wherein people might die as well, right? So same वही चीज है, life और death का matter हो जाता है, subniveum है कि नहीं है करके. Consequently, disruptions to the subniveum, right? Consequently मतलब whatever. Because of this, we are also saying that disruptions to the subniveum brought about by climate change. अब यहाँ पे आ गया मेन पॉइंट, climate change. Because of climate change, subniveum में जो disruptions होते हैं, that will affect everything from population dynamics to nutrient cycling through the ecosystem. मतलब सब कुछ चीज को affect होगा. अभी population dynamics कौन है, nutrient cycling कौन सा है, कुछ करने का जरूरत नहीं है. You just have to understand that because of climate change, right, the subniveum gets disrupted. And because this gets disrupted and it's a matter of life and death for people or species that exist, because of that there will be a significant change in the ecosystem that exists. तो छोड़ दो इसको. The formation and stability of the subniveum. अब बोला गया कि how does the subniveum get formed and what are the reasons behind the stability of the subniveum. Yeah, what is the importance of the subniveum formation and stability. मेरे को पता नहीं क्या है आगे, but I'm just saying that okay, we have established that subniveum is very important. If there is something bad happening with subniveum, then it is bad for all the species that depend on the subniveum. यहाँ तक it should be clear. Requires more than a few flurries. Again, we don't know what flurries is. Flurries नहीं पता क्या होता है. It's okay, forget about it. Requires more than a few. मतलब it needs a lot of things. That's it. अब वो क्या है मेरे को नहीं पता. Winter ecologists have suggested that 8 inches of snow. 8 inches of snow is necessary. Important word necessary. क्या necessity है? 8 inches of snow होना चाहिए to develop a stable layer of insulation. Depth is not the only factor, however. So 8 inches is the depth. What else is the factor? More accurately, the stability of the subniveum depends on the interaction between snow depth and snow density. So there are two factors. ये important है पूरे अभी तक जो भी paragraph हुआ है. In this entire paragraph, only these two terms are important. Snow depth is important and snow density is important. Now, if you know basic vocab, you have a basic vocabulary तो भी चलेगा. Snow depth मतलब 8 inches of snow, that much is required. And snow density, density मतलब just putting 8 inches of snow on top of each other is not important. How it is placed on top of each other is also important. Imagine being under a stack of blankets that are all flattened and pressed together. When compressed, the blankets essentially form one compacted layer. मतलब it becomes one thick blanket. In contrast, again important, in contrast, but ये example की context में, तो let's see what happens. In contrast, when they are lightly placed on top of one another, their insulative capacity increases because the air pockets between them trap heat. राइट अब ये साइंस क्या है, एयर पॉकेट्स हीट ही ट्रैप क्यों करते हैं, वो हीट को छोड़ क्यों नहीं देते, वो सब चीजों में घुसने की जरूरत नहीं है. We have to accept whatever has been given as facts in this particular passage, right? So because we have multiple blankets that are not stacked together but they are allowed to have some air pockets, it will retain more heat. That is basically the point. Greater depths of low density snow are therefore better at insulating the ground. Greater depths, depth ज्यादा होना चाहिए, and low density snow मतलब बहुत सारे layers होने चाहिए. So if both these things happen, they are better at insulating the ground. Fair enough. Understood the analogy, right? More blankets are better than one stack of closely जो भी stuck together blankets, right? So that is what is being told here. और आगे देखते हैं, both depth and density of snow are sensitive to temperature. अभी वो बोल रहे हैं कि depth and density पे शुरू किया था, both of them are important. Now both of them are sensitive to temperature. Now another concept has come here, temperature आ गया यहाँ पे. Right? Because of temperature, the depth and the density might get affected. Scientists are now beginning to explore how climate change will affect the subnivum. अब climate change मतलब temperature, right? Temperature बढ़ गया या change हो गया तो फिर the depth and density will get affected. Now scientists are trying to explore how does this affect, as well as the species that depend on it. Two things: how does the depth and density, how does the temperature affect the depth and density of the snow, and how does the loss of subnivum affect the species. Right? At first glance, warmer winters seem beneficial for species. Right? अब obvious चीज क्या है? अब what is the problem in this entire context? The problem is that during winter the temperatures drop, right? And to save species from this temperature drop, you need a layer that is called the subnivum. ये story है पूरा. अगर winter का temperature ही बढ़ गया तो problem क्या है? Right? So that is basically the thing. At first glance का मतलब क्या हो गया? एकदम फर्स्ट टाइम व्हेन यू सी इट ना, यू फील दैट इट इज ट्रू, बट राइट यहाँ पे बट या हाउएवर एक होना चाहिए, बिकॉज एट फर्स्ट ग्लांस ऑलवेज टेल्स यू दैट समथिंग इज गोइंग टू चेंज. ऑन फर्स्ट योर फर्स्ट थॉट्स माइट से दैट वार्मर विंटर्स विल बी बेटर ना, तो ग्लोबल वार्मिंग अगर हो रहा है देयर विल बी लेस हार्श विंटर्स. इफ देयर आर लेस हार्श विंटर्स, इवन इफ देयर इज नो ब्लैंकेट, इट्स ओके फॉर यू ना, राइट? बट देन देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम. व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम? As with most ecological phenomena, the consequences are not so straightforward. Right? So we might think that warmer winters might be better, but it is not so straightforward. Research has shown that the snow season, when the snow is more likely than rain, has become shorter since 1970. So snow season has become shorter compared to what it was like, or since 1970 it has gradually become shorter. When rain falls on snow, it increases the density of the snow and reduces its insulative capacity. So when rain falls on the snow, again not required, यहाँ पे साइंस पढ़ने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. I'm just explaining to you for those of you who are curious. Otherwise you can just skip ahead by 30 seconds and you should still be fine. So when water falls on the snow, let's say, the snow will get stacked together. Now because it will get stacked together, it will become more dense. Now as we had been told earlier, a lot of blankets closely stacked together will not give you as much insulation as blankets that are layered out. तो वही चीज यहाँ पे बोली गई है. अगर पानी गिरता है, स्नो गेट्स स्टैक टुगेदर, बिकॉज ऑफ दैट उसका इंसुलेटिव कैपेसिटी कम हो जाता है. सो व्हेन रेन आता है तो फिर इंसुलेटिव कैपेसिटी कम होता है, इतना याद रखने का, ठीक है? सो रेन इंक्रीजेस इंसुलेशन प्रोवाइडेड बाय द सबनिवियम विल go down. ठीक है, दैट्स इट. Therefore, even though winters are expected to become warmer overall from future climate change, the subniveum will tend to become colder. Why will subnivum become colder? Because these are stacked together. इतना जोर से उसको tightly stack हो जाता है वो कि उसका insulation capacity कम हो जाता है. So let's say for example, I'll give you an example. Again, this is not for people who just want to solve the RC. I'm telling you about slightly deeper things so that you can also visualize it and convince yourself when you are solving the passage. Now let's say for example, बाहर का temperature -40 degrees है. Because of the subnivum, इसके नीचे का temperature 0 degrees है. Because इसका insulation capacity better है. But now because of global warming, let's say for example बाहर का टेम्परेचर 30 डिग्रीज है, बट इसका इंसुलेशन कैपेसिटी कम हो गया ना. So earlier it used to be able to reduce the temp or increase the temperature by 40 degrees, but now it is good enough to increase the temperature only by 20 degrees. So now, in spite of the external temperature becoming higher or not being as cold, the interior is getting affected because of the insulation of the subniveum, right? So it's not just about shielding, it's also about reducing the or increasing the temperature, reducing the cold, और वो affect हो रहा है यहाँ पे. So that is a problem, right? So basically the point is that there is going to be a problem to the subniveum even if the temperature increases, right? So ये हम लोग का story है पूरा का पूरा. And it will tend to become colder and more variable with less protection from above ground temperatures. Fair, मतलब कुछ वो नहीं है, it's very easy to understand. Once you have understood the drawing that I showed you. The effects of a colder subniveum are complex. Now because of this, the subniveum has become colder. पहले वाले previous paragraph से. For example, shrubs such as crowberry and alpine azalea जो भी है, doesn't matter, something, shrub 1 and shrub 2, that grow along the forest floor tend to block the wind, right? So ये जो forest floor पे जो shrubs होते हैं, छोटे 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 जो plants होते हैं, they will block the wind that will be there, and because they are blocking the wind, they retain higher depths of snow around them, right? Which is similar to trees ना, you would have heard that thing कि trees अगर plant करते हो तो soil erosion नहीं होता, that you would have heard of. Similarly यहाँ पे भी वही story है, because there are these small shrubs that exist, the snow का 8 inch का जो layer है ना, depth, that does not go away. This captured snow helps to keep soils insulated and in turn increases plant decomposition and nutrient release. Doesn't matter what these are, this captured snow helps. यहाँ पे छोड़ देना इसको. Helps to do what? Doesn't matter. ये कोई scientific passage नहीं है जहाँ पे you're supposed to make conclusions and give some insights for a research, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है, right? This captured snow helps to keep soils insulated and in turn increases plant decomposition, nutrient release. Doesn't matter, it helps. In field experiments, researchers removed a portion of the snow cover. Snow cover निकाल दिया ऊपर का, to investigate the importance of the subniveum's insulation. They found that soil frost in the snow-free area resulted in damage to plant roots. Right? तो soil frost हो गया ना, because the cover has been removed. Now the soil will become colder and the soil will become frosted in a way. Because of this soil frost, damage to plant roots and sometimes even death of the plant. समझ में आ गया? Very 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 easy passage. I think we covered it in 14 minutes in spite of reading it very slowly and in depth. तो exam के time पे I'm sure you will be able to manage this in 5 odd minutes, right? Should be able to manage this in 4 to 5 minutes. तो पूरा स्टोरी समझ में आ गया, right? यहाँ पे बोला गया है कि first, when it is cold, subniveum helps the organisms, the species that stay below this snow blanket, right? Snow blanket will protect these species and it depends on the depth and the density of the snow covering it. ये समझ में आ गया, depth and density, right? अगर यहाँ पे कोई भी issue होता है, then all the species get affected. ये वाला भी पता चल गया, ये भी समझ में आ गया, right? We might feel that having a very solid layer of स्नो माइट बी बेटर, बट ऐसा नहीं है. वी आर सेइंग दैट जितने ज्यादा लेयर होंगे उतना ही बेटर है. तो सिर्फ डेप्थ इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, डेंसिटी इज ऑल्सो इंपॉर्टेंट. दैट इज व्हाट हैज बीन टोल्ड टू अस. ये सारी चीजें टेम्परेचर पे डिपेंडेंट होती हैं. नाउ बिकॉज टेम्परेचर इज इंक्रीजिंग, वी माइट फील करे विंटर का टेम्परेचर तो बढ़ गया है, वी डोंट इवन नीड द ब्लैंकेट, सबनिवियम क्या जरूरत है, राइट? बट देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम. हाउएवर देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम, इट्स नॉट दैट स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड, राइट? बिकॉज ऑफ रेन्स इंक्रीजिंग, बिकॉज ऑफ ग्लोबल वार्मिंग, the density also goes up. It's very dense now, and because the density goes up, उसका insulation property कम हो जाता है, like that blanket वाला example, ठीक है? And that is basically the problem. Also because of the loss of this subniveum, जो roots होते हैं ना plants के, वो भी affect हो जाते हैं, and because of that the plants can die as well. So it's a very straightforward passage, very easy passage to understand. Now let's get going with the questions. जल्दी questions देख लेते हैं. The purpose of this passage is to do what? राइट? क्या क्या पैसेज के अंदर एक कॉन्सेप्ट इंट्रोड्यूस किया, सबनिवियम, एंड सबनिवियम के बारे में बताया कि हाउ डज सबनिवियम गेट फॉर्म्ड, व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम इफ द सबनिवियम गोज अवे, हाउ ग्लोबल वार्मिंग इज अफेक्टिंग द सबनिवियम, हाउ प्लांट के रूट्स माइट डाई एंड ट्रीज आल्सो माइट डाई बिकॉज द सबनिवियम गेट्स इरोडेड. ये सब चीजें बताई गई हैं. नाउ लेट्स सी व्हाट हैपेंस. इंट्रोड्यूस रीडर्स टू अ रिलेटिवली अननोन इकोसिस्टम, द सबनिवियम. यस, वेरी नाइस. Right? So people who must have read this, most of them would not have known what subnivium is. मेरे को भी नहीं पता था subnivium क्या होता है. The first time I read this passage, I had no idea what subnivium is. Right? So it introduced me to a relatively unknown ecosystem, subnivium. Yes. But does the passage end at the first paragraph? फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ में इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया सबनिवियम क्या होता है करके, बट द पैसेज डज नॉट एंड देयर, द पैसेज गोज ऑन फॉर अनदर 5 पैराग्राफ्स कि कैसे फॉर्म होता है, हाउ डज द डेंसिटी वर्क, हाउ डज द डेप्थ वर्क, व्हाट हैपेंस इफ इट गेट्स इरोडेड, हाउ डज ग्लोबल वार्मिंग अफेक्ट इट, ये सारी चीजें बताई गई हैं. सो दिस इज फाइन, दिस इज ट्रू, बट इज इट द पर्पस ऑफ द पैसेज? दैट वी विल हैव टू चेक इफ वी हैव अ बेटर ऑप्शन. Explain how the subnimium works to provide shelter and food to several species. अब ये भी सही है, how the subnimium works to provide shelter बताया गया है, food has not been mentioned anywhere, right? But ठीक है, चलो पकड़ के चलते हैं कि how the subnimium works to help several species, ये बताया गया है. But is that the purpose of the passage? We are not talking about how it works and how species are very happy करके. A significant part of the passage goes about explaining how the erosion of the subnimium will lead to deterioration of the ecosystem that exists. तो ये भी partially true है, but it might not be the best option. If I get an option जहाँ पे everything has been mentioned, then I will go for it. कि इसका negative effect क्या है वो पता अगर होगा तो I might go for that option. Third, outline the effects of climate change on the subnimium. राइट, आउटलाइन द इफेक्ट्स ऑफ क्लाइमेट चेंज ऑन द सबनिवियम. तो पहले तो सबनिवियम क्या होता है वो बताया हुआ है, राइट, एंड आफ्टर दैट वी हैव बीन टोल्ड व्हाट एग्जैक्टली इज द इफेक्ट ऑफ टेम्परेचर ऑन द सबनिवियम, रेन ऑन द सबनिवियम, इरोजन ऑन द सबनिवियम, ऑल दोस थिंग्स हैव बीन मेंशन्ड टू अस. सो आउटलाइन द इफेक्ट्स ऑफ क्लाइमेट चेंज लुक्स बेटर देन जस्ट इंट्रोड्यूसिंग सबनिवियम. अब ये बताने के लिए सबनिवियम क्या होता है वो बताना जरूरी था, दैट्स व्हाई दे मेंशन व्हाट सबनिवियम इज. Right, otherwise the majority of the passage, if you look at the paragraphs as well, even if you give numbers to the paragraph, first paragraph is introduction to subnivium, second paragraph again importance of subnivium, third paragraph climate change introduce हो गया यहाँ पे, fourth paragraph यहाँ पे depth of density snow and all those things again थोड़ा सा introduction आ गया यहाँ पे, the next one depth and density are sensitive to temperature, right, and again shorter since 1970 rainfall, again we are talking about climate change, last one again we are talking about climate change. So 4 out of 6 paragraphs, 7 paragraphs we are talking about climate change. So this basically becomes, of course this is true and this is better than the previous two options which are a matter of fact options, जो first two. Fourth, draw an analogy between the effect of blankets on humans and snow cover on species living in the subnivum. This is just the first paragraph and maybe the fourth paragraph जहाँ पे blankets के साथ उसका analogy बताया गया है. But that is not the purpose of the passage. कह रहे जैसे हम लोग का ब्लैंकेट होता है ना वैसे उन लोग का सबनिवियम होता है. That is not the point of the passage. The point of the passage is to make you aware of the subnivium one and to make you aware of the climate change that is affecting the subnivium. ठीक है, so D is definitely out. One के अंदर definitely not true because that is not the point of the passage. We definitely have better options. This one is fine, but we are not talking about climate change at all, which is a significant part of the paragraph. So this is not true. And this one, effects of climate change on the subnivium, is much better than the first two options because climate change is a significant part of the passage. ठीक है, so that is why C will be the answer here and not A or B, and D तो definitely is not the right answer. If there's something you're not understood, do let me know in the chat. I'll try to explain it to you in a better manner, or maybe I'll try to counter your position, but it's a relatively easy question. So I'll just go to the next one. All of the following statements are true except snow depth and snow density both influence the stability of the subnivium. Yes, we have marked it. Depth and density दोनों उसको affect करते हैं. So this statement is true. We have to find the except वाला statement. Second, climate change has some positive effects on the subnivium. Positive effects तो बात ही नहीं की है, right? We have only been talking about the negative effects of climate change. ग्लोबल वार्मिंग हो गया, टेम्परेचर बढ़ गया, रेन सीजन बढ़ गया, विंटर सीजन कम हो गया, स्नो सीजन कम हो गया, whatever. The shrubs are getting eroded, soil frigidity हो जाता है, and all those things have been mentioned, right? So positive change की तो बात नहीं की है यहाँ पे. So this is not true. Let's look at the other options and let's see. The subnivium maintains a steady temperature that can be 30 to 40 degrees warmer than the winter air temperature. Perfect. ये बताया गया, exactly the same thing has been mentioned in the first paragraph. So this is definitely true. Researchers have established the adverse effects of dwindling snow cover on the subnivium. Yes, they have established. In fact, वो experiment भी किया था जिसमें they removed the snow cover and then the roots became weak and the trees and plants died. So this is also true. So this is very obvious. The correct answer is option B. Positive effect तो बताया नहीं गया है, negative भर भर के बताए हुए हैं. तो there is nothing positive as such that has been spoken about climate change on the subnivium, right? So fairly straightforward question. I think everybody should have got the second answer. Third question, based on this extract, the author would support which one of the following actions? The use of snow machines in winter to ensure snow cover of at least 8 inches. अब snow cover of 8 inches talks about the depth, but does it talk about the density? Does it talk about the rainfall वाला part? Does it talk about the cover getting eroded? वो सब चीज़ों की बात ही नहीं हो रही ना यहाँ पे. सिर्फ मैंने स्नो कवर डाल दिया 8 इंच का, दैट इज नॉट गोइंग टू हेल्प. डेंसिटी इज ऑल्सो गोइंग टू बी एन इशू, because irrespective of however thick the layer is, if the density is very thick then the insulation will be poor. So यहाँ पे सिर्फ डेप्थ की बात हो रही है. So this is okay, but a very वो बैंडेड वाला रिस्पॉन्स है, मतलब तुम्हारा हाथ कट गया बट यू हैव पुट अ बैंडेड ऑन टॉप ऑफ इट, राइट? सो दैट्स काइंड ऑफ अ थिंग. So it's okay, but it's not great. Second, government action to curb climate change. Climate change was the major part of the paragraph passage as we had already established, right? So यहाँ पे जो हम लोग बोल रहे हैं, government action to curb climate change that attacks the premise of the entire destruction of the subniveum. ठीक है? तो climate change is a strong option here. Government action होना चाहिए, which is a solid action is what we are assuming. Adding nutrients to the soil in winter, not really. Nutrients तो ठीक है, insulation कहाँ से मिलेगा? Nutrients से insulation तो नहीं मिलता, right? Planting more shrubs in the areas of short snow season. अब shrubs जो है that is one part of the passage. Shrubs will help that establish the depth of the snow cover, right? But shrubs लाके भी अगर पानी ज़्यादा हो रहा है, if the climate is bad and if the density is very high, then there is again going to be an issue. So only planting shrubs is not going to help. That's again a very superficial way of doing things. ये भी superficial way of doing things है. Government action होना चाहिए to curb climate change is a long-term solution which attacks the base of this entire issue. ठीक है? That's why option B is the one that is the correct one for question number 3. Alright. Question 4 देख लेते हैं जल्दी से. In paragraph 6, the author provides the examples of crowberry and alpine azalea to demonstrate that. क्या होता है? Shrubs है ना? Those shrubs, if the shrubs are not there, then the ice cover goes away. If the ice cover, the snow cover sort of goes away, then the insulation is lost and the soil becomes frozen, frigid, and because of that, your trees and their roots might die. ठीक है? So that is basically the context. तो paragraph 6 के options देख लेते क्या क्या है. So first option is despite frigid temperatures, several species survive in temperate and arctic regions. That is not the point, na? The point is these will hold the snow together and prevent erosion of the subniveum. ठीक है, ये पॉइंट है ना. सेवरल स्पीशीज सर्वाइव का मतलब क्या हो गया? दैट इज नॉट द पॉइंट ऑफ दीज एग्जांपल्स. वो तो ऐसे ही बोल सकते थे भाई वो रहते हैं वहां पे आर्कटिक रीजन के अंदर. सो दिस इज नॉट द पॉइंट ऑफ क्रोबेरी एंड अल्पाइन एजेलिया. सेकंड, ड्यू टू फ्रिजिड टेम्परेचर्स इन द टेम्परेट एंड आर्कटिक रीजन्स, प्लांट स्पीशीज दैट सर्वाइव टेंड टू बी श्रब्स रादर देन ट्रीज. अगेन नॉट मेंशन्ड एट ऑल. दिस इज सम अलग टेंजेंट पे कुछ चल रहा है ये स्टोरी. ठीक है, नॉट एग्जैक्टली व्हाई दे हैव मेंशन्ड दिस. The crowberry and alpine azalea are abundant in temperate and arctic regions. Again, the point is not this. The point is subniveum. The point is climate change of this passage, right? यहाँ पे वो छोड़ के बाकी सब कुछ बताया जा रहा है. Fourth option, the stability of the subniveum. चलो finally subniveum comes in the options. Depends on several interrelated factors, including shrubs on the forest. Beautiful answer, right? So this is obviously the right answer. मतलब इसको explain करने की भी जरूरत नहीं पड़नी चाहिए. Right? Because of crowberry and alpine azalea, the snow gets collected, depth बनता है उसका, stability of the subniveum happens, and that is dependent on a lot of interrelated factors, depth, density, and these shrubs that are there will help the subniveum be maintained or at least be present. ठीक है? That's why option D is the correct answer to this particular question. Question 5 देखते हैं. Which of the following statements can be inferred from the passage? In an ecosystem, altering any one element has a ripple effect on all others. Perfect. क्या क्या बताया गया है? मतलब think about it, right? Temperatures have risen. Because temperatures have risen, because of climate change, the temperatures have risen. Because the temperatures have risen, winters are warmer, but warmer winters don't help because rainfall ज़्यादा होता है. Because there is more rainfall, the density of the snow increases. Because the density of the snow increases, the subniveum does not provide as much insulation as would have been possible. Because of that, the species die. So एक element, climate change, global warming, because of that, ripple effect on everything else. पूरा ecosystem में problem हो गया. This is a very nice way of talking about it, right? We can infer this for sure. Second, climate change affects temperate and arctic regions more than equatorial or arid ones. अगेन इक्वेटोरियल एडवांस बोला ही नहीं है. जस्ट बिकॉज टेम्परेट एंड आर्कटिक हैज बीन मेंशन्ड, दैट डज नॉट मीन दैट इट विल अफेक्ट ओनली द टेम्परेट और इट विल मेजरली अफेक्ट द टेम्परेट एंड द आर्कटिक रीजन्स. फॉर ऑल यू नो इवन द इक्वेटोरियल रीजन्स माइट गेट अफेक्टेड इन अ डिफरेंट मैनर. पैसेज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में नहीं है, बट हो सकता है ना नॉर्मली. तो पैसेज ये नहीं बोलता कि बाकी सब लोगों में कुछ प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, ओनली आर्कटिक एंड टेम्परेट में इशू है करके. दैट इज नॉट व्हाट द पैसेज सेज. तो बी इज डेफिनेटली नॉट राइट. C. A compact layer of wool is warmer than a similar layer of goose down. Nothing mentioned anywhere. Not wool, not goose down, nothing has been mentioned. So forget about this. The loss of the subniveum, while tragic, will affect only temperate and arctic regions. अब यहाँ पे फर्स्ट ऑप्शन में कितना अच्छे से बोला है कि रिपल इफेक्ट ऑन ऑल अदर्स है. डी में बोला गया है कि भाई सिर्फ टेम्परेट और आर्कटिक रीजन पे इशू होगा. इट्स नॉट लाइक दैट ना. अगेन वी आर नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट अदर species that are dependent on the subniveum. There might be some birds who might be dependent on eating those species that survive because of the subniveum. तो वो भी हो सकता है, right? उसकी वजह से और भी चीजें आगे हो सकती हैं. Because these plants grow, then they might release more oxygen in the air or whatever happens. I don't know what it is, but we are not saying that it will affect only the temperate and the arctic regions. Again, only is an extreme option. So there is a video that is coming up. I think next week we are going to release it, which will talk about your journey from the 60th percentile to the 99th percentile for the VARC section. उसमें I have given you some pointers on how to select options in a better manner. उसमें there is one spoiler that I am sharing with all of you who are present today, that I am talking about extreme options in that. तो extreme options जहाँ पे भी होते हैं ना, be very careful. Mostly वो आंसर नहीं होगा. Right, will only affect only temperate and arctic regions. बाकी लोग अपना देख लेंगे. Right, affects temperate and arctic regions more than equatorial regions. तो जो नहीं दिया उसको assume नहीं करना है. So of course, when we have such a beautiful option in the form of option A, why go for random options like B, C, and D? Right. So A is definitely the correct answer. There is again no doubt about this one. Last question देख लेते हैं. In paragraph 1, the author uses blankets as a device to do what? तो the author wants you to understand subniveum. अब सब सीधा बोल देते भाई subniveum होता है and it provides insulation. You might not have understood. The author uses blankets so that you can use something that you know and apply that knowledge to something that you don't know. So that is basically the point. So evoke the bitter cold of winter in the minds of the readers. No, not just that. वो है, but not just that. You should take an experience from here and you should be able to replicate that experience in some other context. वो है. Explain how blankets work to keep us warm. No, we know how blankets work to keep us warm. Right? Blanket है वो warm रखता है. That's it. Right? उसके अंदर और बहुत ज़्यादा ज्ञान नहीं दिया हुआ है. Draw an analogy between blankets and the snowpack. Yes. Take the knowledge that you know from blankets and apply it to the snowpack that exists elsewhere. ठीक है? So this is a nice option. Alert readers to the fatal effects of excessive exposure to the cold. Again. नहीं ना, that the point of the passage क्या? What is the point of the passage? Subniveum, snow होता है. You don't know what subniveum is. इसके लिए वो blanket का एक बता दिया तुमको कि भाई blanket होता है जिससे you get insulation. Similar to that, there is a subniveum that gives insulation to plants and animals and other species that reside below that snow layer. Right? So C is of course a very good option compared to the other three, and that's why that is the answer. Right? So that was the first passage. Very manageable passage. मतलब it's not difficult to read, difficult to understand. थोड़ा scientific jargon है, I agree. But otherwise, it's a nice passage to read, easy passage to read. You can identify with most of the things that have been mentioned there. एक प्यारा सा analogy भी दिया हुआ है for those of you who might not be able to know or understand what subniveum is. So it's a very nice passage, simple questions, options are far apart. मतलब कुछ भी नहीं है. इससे easy passage शायद CAT में मिलेगा नहीं. Right? And this was an actual CAT passage. So that was basically the first one. I'll show you the second passage. Have a look at it. I'll just check once if this is visible. Yes, this is visible. Okay. So have a look at the second passage. We are talking about Vikings here. It's a shorter passage with 3 questions. So have a look at it. Take a couple of minutes. We will start at 8:42ish. This is the first paragraph of the passage. This is the second paragraph, last paragraph of the passage. Since the artifacts were found in the marketplace areas at each site, ये second paragraph है. This is question number 1. The primary purpose of this passage is to do what? The second question is the evidence. Most of the artifacts also date to the 780s, but some are as old as 725 has been used. And this is the last question. All of the following hold true for Vikings except what? ठीक है. So have a look at this. So यहाँ पे we are talking about Vikings, we are talking about the date of these things and primary purpose. ये मेरे को ढूंढना है And with that in mind, let's read the passage and figure it out. So take a couple of minutes. We'll start at 8:43. Till that time, you can just read it, pause the video, understand the passage, and then we will start solving this. All right, let's look at let's look at this one, and let's try to see what we can make of this. Despite, first word, right? Despite, in spite of, however, in addition to, all these are nice transition words. तो पहले transition word डाल दिया. Despite their fierce reputation, तो fierce हमको लगता है fierce है, but Vikings may not have always been the plunderers and pillagers popular culture imagines them to be. May not have, ठीक है? So Vikings are not equal to plunderers, ठीक है? तो वो लोग प्लंडर नहीं किए. प्लंडर इज बेसिकली लूटिंग सम प्लेस, सम ज्योग्राफी, सम रीजन, ठीक है? तो दे वर नॉट ऑलवेज प्लंडरर्स. तो आउटसाइड में बता दिया भाई वाइकिंग्स जो प्लंडरर्स नहीं थे. इनफैक्ट दे गॉट देयर स्टार्ट ट्रेडिंग इन नॉर्थ यूरोपियन मार्केट्स, रिसर्चर्स सजेस्ट. दीज पीपल स्टार्टेड ट्रेडिंग, एंड ट्रेडिंग करके वो नॉर्थन यूरोपियन मार्केट्स में आ गए थे, ठीक है? Combs carved from animal antlers, combs, whichever you want to pronounce it. Combs carved from animal antlers. Antlers are the horns that deer and other stag and all those animals are. तो वो होता है. As well as comb manufacturing waste and raw antler material has turned up at 3 archaeological sites. Combs carved from animal antlers, तो ये आ गए हैं. And comb manufacturing waste, मतलब manufacture भी किया था and combs भी बनाए थे. Right, so those things have turned up at 3 archaeological sites in Denmark, including a medieval marketplace in the city of Ribe, doesn't matter, Ribe, whatever, I don't know how this is pronounced. A team of researchers from Denmark and the UK hoped to identify the species of animal to which these antlers once belonged. So antlers भी मिले हैं and the antler manufacturing unit का भी कुछ evidence मिला है, ठीक है? So we have seen combs and we have also seen manufacturing units. एविडेंस मिला है मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट्स का, ठीक है? नाउ हाउ डिड दे आइडेंटिफाई द स्पीशीज ऑफ द एनिमल? by analyzing collagen proteins in the samples and comparing them with other across the animal kingdom. We have seen the questions, right? Primary purpose of the passage पूछा गया है, वो 725, 793 कुछ तो एक मैथ्स का क्वेश्चन है, why this era has been mentioned, and the third question is all of the following hold true for Vikings except. तो कहीं पे भी मेरे को ये इसका जरूरत नहीं है कि क्या कोलेजन प्रोटीन यूज किया, हाउ डिड दे सैंपल इट, हाउ डिड दे कंपेयर इट, मेरे को नहीं जरूरत है, तो फॉरगेट अबाउट दिस. लॉरा गेगेल कहीं पे दिया ही नहीं है क्वेश्चन के अंदर, फॉरगेट अबाउट हर. रिपोर्ट्स फॉर लाइफ साइंस डजंट मैटर. समवॉट सरप्राइजिंगली इंपॉर्टेंट वर्ड, molecular analysis of the artifacts revealed that some combs and other material had been carved from reindeer antlers. आ गया पॉइंट पे, ठीक है. इतना सब मेहनत करके पता चला कि रेनडियर के एंटलर्स थे, दैट्स इट. गिवन दैट रेनडियर, रैंजीफर टैरेंडस जो भी उसका बायोलॉजिकल नेम है, डोंट लिव इन डेनमार्क, वो डेनमार्क में रहते ही नहीं है, राइट. ये मटेरियल जो है ना डेनमार्क में मिला है. दे आर सीन दिस मटेरियल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कोम्स एंटलर्स इन डेनमार्क इज व्हाट दे आर फाउंड. बट डेनमार्क में वो रेनडियर रहते ही नहीं है, दैट इज द बिग रिवील. ये लोग डेनमार्क में ही नहीं. द रिसर्चर्स पोजिट दैट इट अराइव्ड ऑन वाइकिंग शिप्स फ्रॉम नॉर्वे, ठीक है. रेनडियर डेनमार्क में नहीं रहते, नॉर्वे से डेनमार्क में दोस रेनडियर केम इट सीम्स. एंटलर क्राफ्टमैनशिप इन द फॉर्म ऑफ डेकोरेटिव कोम्स वाज पार्ट ऑफ वाइकिंग कल्चर. Such combs served as symbols of good health, right? So decorative combs बनाते थे, antler craftsmanship करते थे, and they were a symbol of good health. So it was a good omen to have these kind of antlers. The fact that the animals shed their antlers also made them easy to collect from the large herds that inhabited Norway. तो उनको मारना भी नहीं पड़ता था, they shed their antlers, गिर जाते थे, right? तो उनको उठा के लेके आ जाते थे लोग, that's it. And उस पे कुछ carving करेंगे, something they will do, some craftsmanship these people will do, ठीक है. That's what has been mentioned here. Then since the artifacts were found in marketplace areas at each site, it is more likely that Norsemen came to trade rather than pillage. So again same चीज बताया गया है कि वो लोग traders थे, वो लोग pillage या plunder करने के लिए नहीं आते थे, right? These people were traders more than plunderers again. Most of the artifacts also date to the 780s. तो 780s में ये बताता, I'm assuming it is 780 AD. बट सम आर एज ओल्ड एज 725, राइट. तो कुछ 725 के भी डेटिंग करके मिल गए हैं, कुछ 780 तक के भी मिल गए हैं. तो ऑल दीज थिंग्स आर देयर, राइट. दैट प्रीडेट्स द बिगिनिंग ऑफ द वाइकिंग रेड्स ऑन ग्रेट ब्रिटेन बाय अबाउट 70 ईयर्स, ठीक है. ट्रेडिशनली द सो कॉल्ड वाइकिंग एज बिगैन विद दिस रेड्स इन 793. हिस्ट्री में क्या बोला गया है, 793 वाज द टाइम वेयर इन वाइकिंग्स रेडेड ग्रेट ब्रिटेन. 793 में रेड किया था ग्रेट ब्रिटेन को, एंड दे आर लाइक वाइकिंग्स ना सिर्फ रेड करने के लिए आए थे, एंड दे केम एंड दे स्टार्टेड रेडिंग. बट द पैसेज इज अगेन एंड अगेन ट्राइंग टू टेल यू दैट ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. वाइकिंग्स वेयर लुकिंग एट नॉर्थर्न यूरोप सिंस 725, जो हमको एंटलर्स के एज से पता चला है, राइट. सो एंटलर्स के एज से ये पता चलता है कि देयर वाज अ मार्केट प्लेस के आसपास दीज पीपल यूज्ड टू कम एंड ट्रेड, एंड दीज ट्रेड्स हैपेंड समवेयर इन द 725s और 780s एज वेल. एंड उसके बाद 793 में देयर कुड बी सम हिस्ट्री जहां पे रेड्स हुए थे, राइट. दैट वाज व्हाट वी हैव बीन टोल्ड हियर. एंड एंडेड विद द नॉर्मन कॉन्क्वेस्ट ऑफ ग्रेट ब्रिटेन इन 1066. आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट्स हैड सस्पेक्टेड दैट द वाइकिंग्स हैड एक्सपीरियंस विद लॉन्ग मैरीटाइम वॉयजेस. तो वो लोग ट्रैवल भी करते थे, दैट वी नो, दैट माइट हैव प्रीसीडेड देयर रीडिंग डेज. सो रीडिंग डेज के पहले वो लोग ट्रैवल करके आते थे, राइट. दैट इज व्हाट हैज बीन मेंशन्ड. बियॉन्ड नॉर्वे these combs would have been a popular industry in Scandinavia as well, right. It is possible that the antler combs represent a larger trade network where the Norsemen supplied raw material to craftsmen in Denmark and elsewhere. So basically ये बोला गया कि भाई जो हम लोग को नॉर्डिक माइथोलॉजी या फिर हमको वाइकिंग्स के बारे में पता है ना, हमको लगता है कि वो सब प्लंडरर्स है, पिलेजर्स एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स इज व्हाट वी नो ऑफ. बट दैट इज नॉट द केस. दे वर ट्रेडर्स अर्लियर, स्पेशली व्हेन दे गॉट इंट्रोड्यूस्ड टू यूरोप. हाउ डिड वी फाइंड आउट कि वो ट्रेडर्स थे करके? मैं से हवा में तो नहीं बोल सकता ट्रेडर्स थे करके. कैसे पता चला? बिकॉज वी हैड अ लुक एट द एंटलर्स. अब वो एंटलर्स थे ना, उसकी फैक्ट्री भी हमको, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट भी पता चल रहा है, वेस्ट मटेरियल भी मिल रहा है, एंड कूम्स भी बन रहे हैं उसके, वो सारी चीजें मेरे को मिल रही हैं. कहाँ पे मिल रहे हैं? डेनमार्क में मिल रहे हैं. बट डेनमार्क में रेनडियर थे ही नहीं, तो फिर वो आए कहाँ से? दीज वाइकिंग्स गॉट देम, राइट. दीज वाइकिंग्स गॉट दी एटलीस्ट दी एंटलर्स दे गॉट. रेनडियर को इंट्रोड्यूस किया कि मेरे को नहीं पता, बट एंटलर्स तो लेके आए थे. दे सेट अप दोस यूनिट्स एंड दे सोल्ड दीज एंटलर्स, एंड वहां से ट्रेड चालू हो गया. दिस ट्रेड वेंट ऑन फॉर अ लॉन्ग टाइम एंड आफ्टर दैट कभी तो 793 में दे एंडेड अप रेडिंग ग्रेट ब्रिटेन, राइट, दैट इज व्हाट हैज बीन मेंशन्ड। एंड हमेशा ये बोला गया है कि भाई वो ट्रेडर्स पहले थे एंड देन दे बिकेम प्लंडरर्स और देन दे शिफ्टेड टू प्लंडरिंग, दैट्स इट, राइट। सो ये पूरा स्टोरी है पैसेज का। द प्राइमरी पर्पस ऑफ दिस पैसेज इज टू डू व्हाट? फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ क्या बोलता है भाई, हमारा तो ये है कि वाइकिंग्स आर प्लंडरर्स, दैट इज आवर इमेज ऑफ दीज पीपल, राइट। बट वाइकिंग्स वर नॉट essentially plunderers, they were traders and they traded antlers, and after that at some point in time they might have become plunderers or they became plunderers, right? So let's see, to explain the presence of reindeer antler combs in Denmark, हाँ अब ये बताया गया है, बट पैसेज के अंदर सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज क्या है? वाइकिंग्स। ये ऑप्शन में वाइकिंग्स ही नहीं दिया हुआ है, तो रेंडर एंटलर कोम के बारे में बताने का पॉइंट नहीं है पैसेज का। इट इज अबाउट वाइकिंग्स, हाउ दे वर ट्रेडर्स मोर देन रेडर्स एंड मोर देन पिलेजर्स एंड प्लंडरर्स, वो नहीं है ये बताया गया है ना। रेंडर एंटलर कैसा, उसका पॉइंट नहीं है पैसेज के अंदर। इट्स अ पार्ट ऑफ द पैसेज, यस, बट इट इज नॉट द सेंट्रल आइडिया, प्राइमरी पर्पस नहीं है पैसेज का। To contract the widely accepted beginning date of the Viking age in Britain and propose an alternate one. Propose an alternate one, 725 780 बोला गया है, right? But this is not the point. First statement क्या बोलता है? Contrary to popular belief, Vikings are not people who are plunderers and pillagers. ये बोला गया है। And कैसे? They were traders. वो लोग एंटलर्स का ट्रेड करते थे, उन लोगों ने मैरिटाइम रूट्स एस्टैब्लिश किए थे, ऑल दोस थिंग्स हैव बीन मेंशन्ड। सिर्फ बिगिनिंग डेट को चेंज करने के लिए नहीं बोला गया है, राइट। द पॉइंट इज टू चेंज द कैरेक्टर ऑफ वाइकिंग्स एज वी नो वाइकिंग्स टू बी प्लंडरर्स, लूटर्स, रेडर्स, राइट। वी नो पीपल दे आर वेरी आई डोंट नो, मतलब दे आर वेरी क्रूड, लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल, वो हमारा थॉट प्रोसेस है व्हेन इट कम्स टू वाइकिंग्स, राइट। बट यहाँ पे ऐसे नहीं बोल रहे हैं, यहाँ पे बोल रहे हैं कि भाई वाइकिंग्स जो थे वो ट्रेडर्स थे, दिमाग लगा के काम करते थे। So again, we are not talking about beginning date, just the beginning date. We are talking about Vikings का पूरा characteristics, right? To challenge the popular perception of Vikings as raiders by using evidence that suggests their early trade relations within Europe. Brilliantly done. Trade relations को establish किया है, popular perception को challenge किया है. All these things are properly happening in the passage. So this is a much better option than A or B, ना? So beginning date is not the point. The point is the perception, right? So C looks to be a good option. D देखते हैं. To argue that besides being violent pillagers, Vikings were also skilled craftsmen and efficient traders. अब ये तो नहीं बोला है ना कि besides being violent pillagers, तो बात ही नहीं की है। They have just said that जो उन लोगों ने ग्रेट ब्रिटेन के ऊपर कब्जा करने की कोशिश की थी लास्ट में 793 में, they began with this raids, Viking age जो बोला गया है उसको जिस मेंशन किया गया है। ऐसे नहीं बोला गया है कि ये जो वाइकिंग्स थे वो वायलेंट पिलेजर्स तो थे ही, बट देन दे वर ऑल्सो स्किल्ड क्राफ्ट्समैन, ऐसे नहीं बोला गया है। They have said that they were traders before they started something, besides नहीं है, right? So as raiders, by using evidence to suggest their early trade relations with Europe is a much better option than this one as well, right? They are not saying कि Vikings pillagers थे, but they were also good traders, ये नहीं बोला गया है। They were traders before they pillaged, so that temporal वाला part है ना, timing वाला part है ना, chronology, that needs to be established, ठीक है? Let's look at the second question. I'll just check if there are some doubts or something. Yeah, Omkar, I am from Mumbai. Alright, so the evidence, most of the artifacts also date to the 780s, but some are as old as 725. ये क्यों बताया गया है? To argue that Vikings ने जो raids किए थे उसके पहले से they had trade relations, वो establish करने के लिए this has been mentioned here. The beginning date of the Viking age should be changed from 793 to 725. Not really. In fact, Viking age has been put in quotes. So Viking age जो हम बोलते हैं, it's not the Viking age. That's what the author refers to. But that is not the point of this. The Viking raids started as early as 725. Not really. They did trade first for a lot of years. Then they raided. Some of the antler artifacts found in Denmark and Great Britain could have come from Scandinavia. Again, we are not talking about it in terms of date. वो आ गए होंगे because they are not resident to that particular region. वो बताया गया है. But 780s और 725 बताने का क्या जरूरत है? The Vikings' trade relations with Europe predates the Viking raids. Beautifully done. Again, we are talking about chronology here. 725 and 780s happened before 793, and 793 was when the raids happened. So because the artifacts are here, we are saying that the trade relations were already established before the raids began. So as simple as that, option D is the correct one here. ठीक है? Last वाला देख लेते हैं. All of the following hold true for Vikings except Vikings brought reindeer from Norway to Denmark for trade purposes. ना, reindeer को ट्रेड करने के लिए लेके नहीं आए थे. एंटलर्स को लेके आए थे। एंटलर्स को ट्रेड किया था, रेंडियर को लेके आए होंगे बट एंटलर्स को ट्रेड किया था। दे डिड नॉट ब्रिंग रेंडियर फ्रॉम नॉर्वे टू डेनमार्क फॉर ट्रेड पर्पसेस, ठीक है। एंटलर्स वर दी वंस दैट वर इंपॉर्टेंट। इनफैक्ट ये बोला गया है कि वो एंटलर्स कैरी करते थे। एंटलर्स वर वेरी इजी टू कलेक्ट बिकॉज इट हैज बीन मेंशन्ड इन द पैसेज वेरी क्लियरली दैट रेंडियर शेड्स एंटलर्स, which basically means you don't need to carry the reindeer. Antler ही लेके आना है ना, reindeer को थोड़ी लेके आना है। So you'll just pick the antler from there, put it in a ship and bring it, right? So reindeer को उठा के लेके आने का जरूरत ही नहीं है, right? So reindeer को नहीं लेके आए थे, antlers को लेके आए थे। So this is not true. Before becoming the raiders of northern Europe, Vikings had trade relations with European nations. Very, very well, correct. This is true, perfectly true. Antler combs regarded by the Vikings as a symbol of good health were part of the Viking culture. अगेन परफेक्टली फाइन, यही है, बराबर बोला है कि उनके लिए तो मतलब इट वाज अ सिंबल ऑफ गुड हेल्थ एंड एवरीथिंग हैज बीन मेंशन्ड पार्ट ऑफ वाइकिंग कल्चर। तो एग्जैक्टली ऐसे कैसे दिया हुआ है। एंटलर क्राफ्ट्समैनशिप इन द फॉर्म ऑफ डेकोरेटिव कोम्स वर पार्ट ऑफ वाइकिंग कल्चर। सच कोम्स सर्व्ड एज सिंबल्स ऑफ गुड हेल्थ, ये सब बताया गया है, राइट। सो दैट इज ऑल्सो ट्रू। Vikings once upon a time had trade relations with Denmark and Scandinavia, again true, राइट। वाइकिंग्स हैड ट्रेड रिलेशंस विद डेनमार्क एंड स्कैंडिनेविया, ये भी बताया गया है। सो आर्कियोलॉजिकल साइट्स एट डेनमार्क में आया है, कहाँ से आ गया, रॉ मटेरियल है, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग वेस्ट है, मतलब दे आर मैन्युफैक्चर्ड इट एंड दे वुड हैव सोल्ड इट आल्सो, क्योंकि डेनमार्क में रेंडियर्स तो नहीं मिलते, राइट। सो दैट इज बेसिकली व्हाट हैज बीन मेंशन्ड हियर, इवन दिस इज ट्रू। सो द ओनली थिंग दैट इज फॉल्स इज दिस, Vikings brought reindeer antlers from Norway to Denmark for trade purposes, not reindeer from Norway to Denmark. So you have to read it very carefully. फर्स्ट क्लास पे यही सही लगता है बिकॉज हाँ लेके तो आए थे, नॉर्वे टू डेनमार्क लेके आए थे, बट देन दैट इज नॉट रियली समथिंग दैट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट इन दिस पर्टिकुलर पैसेज, ठीक है। सो दीज वर द क्वेश्चंस फॉर टुडे। I have a question here, Tanveer. I randomly bumped into your video and came here on the stream. I don't know anything about CAT and MBA. Can you tell me if I can give CAT exam this year or not? Okay, Tanveer, I'll give you one broad guideline as to whether you are eligible for CAT or not. So CAT देने के लिए there are two conditions that exist. One is you should have a minimum of 50% in graduation overall across all the years, वो होना चाहिए. And second thing, you should be finishing your graduation. You should be finishing your graduation by July 2025. ठीक है? If you are going to graduate before June 2025, you are eligible to take the CAT. तो CAT दे सकते हैं, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. And if you are asking whether you can prepare for CAT in the coming 5 months and still take the CAT, उसके लिए there is a video on the channel, you can check it out, 150 days to CAT. उसके अंदर I have discussed it in detail what you need to do to crack the CAT. तो वो हो सकता है, ठीक है. अच्छा, you have 6 years of experience, you are on the other side of the spectrum. 6 years of work ex के अंदर generally I will not recommend you to take the CAT and go for a 2-year MBA because you have already experienced corporate work culture as it is called. You can look at executive MBA programs. Not to say that 2-year MBA programs में लोग नहीं होते. I know people with 7, 8, 9 years of work experience who go for 2-year MBA programs. But in your case, you might want to look at an executive MBA. Because that will be a CV point for you. It will not really be an entire MBA for you. It will be a CV point for you mostly, which will help you apply to companies which require you to have an MBA, right? So that's why an executive MBA might make more sense to you. But for all practical purposes, yes, you can go for an MBA if you are interested in the business side of things, and if you are finding it difficult to grow in your organization because you don't have an MBA degree. Definitely MBA के लिए जा सकते हैं. So don't worry about it. ठीक है. What you can do, Tanveer, is you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. You can just search me. My name is Shashank Prabhu. You can just search me on LinkedIn. You can just get in touch with me. And if you have any queries in terms of why you should be doing it or not, just let me know in a detailed manner what is your thought process about going for an MBA, and then we can maybe take it there. ठीक है. चलो, I'll do that, Tanveer. I'll try to make a video on executive MBA, 1-year MBA, and so on. So I'll try to do something on those lines in the coming few days. ठीक है. चलो. All right. Cool. Perfect. All right. So I hope no problem, Tanveer. Not a problem at all. So I hope all of you had a lot of fun attending this session and got some clarity in terms of these two passages that we discussed. And I'll see you again tomorrow with another session on geometry. So tomorrow's daily drill is on geometry. I think I had erroneously mentioned yesterday that today was geometry, but it is tomorrow. So कल geometry का session होगा. The test will be live at 10 o'clock today. After 10 o'clock it will be live. So have a look at the test, try it out on your own, and then you can sit for the session tomorrow. So tomorrow's session again will start at 8 p.m. and we'll be doing geometry tomorrow. Alright, so thank you everyone for turning up. Again, to reiterate, today is a very special day for all of us because we crossed 1000 subscribers rather. We will look at this moment in history with a lot of fondness. So thank you everyone for being there and staying subscribed and sharing it with your friends and everyone whom you think would benefit from this. Keep on doing that, and we hope to grow even faster and reach out to even more people as we progress along this season. Alright, chalo. Thank you everyone, and bye again. Have a great evening.